At the Ring of Honor 19th anniversary show, Brian Johnson faced Eliism, faced Danhausen, faced LSG in a four-corner survival match. LSG, the Human Rocket, and formerly one half of the tag team Coast to Coast, is electrifying fans with 450 splashes, corkscrew planches, and springboard handspring clotheslines. Whether he's teaming with Shaheem Ali, which you really doesn't do much anymore, for Blueprint Pro in South Florida or elsewhere back in the day, or doing it on his own, LSG is OMG in ROH. Thank you, LSG. Hey, how did you get with Ring of Honor?
Yeah, well, first off, that was an amazing intro, so thank you. Well, Ring of Honor, it's near and dear to my heart. I actually used to go to Ring of Honor events when I was a teenager. Actually, the first ever independent wrestling show I ever went to was a Ring of Honor show. It was Ring of Honor Final Battle 2005. I went totally by accident because I just was a kid. I didn't have money for Raw or SmackDown. And I saw this thing, Ring of Honor was in town in Edison, New Jersey, where I grew up. And I showed up and my mind was blown. And I knew that night, that's it. I want to be a wrestler. And maybe one day I'll work for Ring of Honor. And full circle, look where we are now.
When you were going to Ring of Honor, did you know about Ring of Honor? Because you mentioned the other shows, but was that something that was really new to you? Because it's a different product than what other shows deliver on TV. So was that new to you, or you knew about it?
I had no idea. I knew nothing about it. At the time, I only knew WWE, and I used to watch TNA when it was on Fox Sports. But I had never heard of Ring of Honor before until I walked into the building. I mean, I bought the ticket. And I didn't know what to expect. That information wasn't as readily available at the time. Like, we didn't have streaming services and things like that to check out libraries of content. So I went in not really knowing what to expect, and it just blew my mind.
It's interesting because when you start to develop and you become a wrestler, there's so much out there, so many different things these days, so many different styles. What attracted you to this style, the Ring of Honor style, and explain the Ring of Honor style too?
Yeah. You know what? This is 2005. There was a great mix. You had incredible technical wrestling. You had hard-hitting, brutal, physical stuff. And you also had a lot of like acrobatic, high-flying, athletic stuff that I had never seen before. And the roster, a lot of these guys are capable of doing it all. And I think that's what makes them, makes us the best in the world. We can really do it all. I remember seeing guys like AJ Styles, Nigel McGuinness, Samoa Joe, and it blew my mind because, I had never seen wrestling up close before. It's a totally different experience to see it in person, up close with maybe 300 other people, as opposed to watching it on TV. It's just a whole other experience, and seeing that physicality, to me, made it feel more real, and I wanted to be a part of that. I wanted to feel that too.
Wow, you mentioned some really big names. Ring of Honor has produced so much talent. Yeah. Do you remember anything about that show in particular? I know it was a while ago.
Yeah, I definitely remember like the opening match with Jimmy Rave getting pelted with toilet paper. I just couldn't believe something like that it was possible, because that's not something you see on TV. The whole ring's toilet paper. And then I think that main event was Low Key and Kenta. And that was just, I had never seen anything like that. That just was just out of this world.
If I ask you about Coast to Coast,
yes,
what made Coast to Coast stand out?
I think we were just two hungry guys. We weren't international stars that were coming into the company. We weren't high-profile independent wrestlers coming into the company. We were homegrown guys. We came from the ground up. We met at the Monster Factory in South Jersey. We did the tryouts for Ring of Honor. We did the ring crew. We traveled in the ring truck and all that. And I think that's the cool part about it, is we were kind of like the true underdogs on the roster. Just to watch two guys rise, going from almost losing every match to having a 2018 where we went almost undefeated the entire year. I think that's what people loved about us and what made us stand out.
You mentioned the Monster Factory, and we're going to get into that. Incredible. So you two then met and formed a team at the Monster Factory. Who or what brought it together?
Yeah, we actually didn't team at the Monster Factory. He was always part of a different tag team, but we both had a similar goal to go to Ring of Honor. when we started training with Ring of Honor and going to the Ring of Honor dojo, we decided, you know what, we're both here together. We both, want to get a job here. Look at the tag teams. Look at the tag team division. Why not join forces? We know each other. We've known each other for years. Let's just do this together. Why not? And that's where it formed at the Ring of Honor dojo. We just gave it a shot, and the rest is history.
Singles or tag team? What do you like better?
They have their benefits. Being in a tag team gave me the opportunity to go to Mexico. I went to Germany for 2 months. I've been able to go to all over the country. So that's pretty awesome. I got to wrestle guys like the Young Bucks and Viking Raiders and Motor City Machine Gun, and the list goes on and on. But singles too, there's a different side of that where I get to it's like my playground. I get to really just do whatever I want and be myself and just tell a better story when I'm a singles wrestler. So they both have their benefits, and right now I'm having a blast being on my own. I'm not gonna lie, I like it.
Though, what made it work for Coast to Coast?
I think that just that mutual respect for each other and that similar goal in mind. Neither of us was trying to get ahead of the other. We had this just awesome respect and brotherhood. I think the fact that we knew each other and we were actually friends made it work. We weren't two strangers that were forced to tag with each other. That bond that we created at the Monster Factory really kept us together and made it all fun. It's very fun to travel the whole world with one of your best friends.
When I hear the name Coast to Coast, I think East Coast to West Coast.
Yeah.
How did you guys come up with the name? And what is the reference for the name? And a three-parter. This is a three-part question. And did you have other names that you considered?
Okay, so all right, one. Yes, a lot of people think East Coast, West Coast, and that's obvious. That comes to mind. But it actually came about from doing a double coast to coast from the corners, and I think it might have been Kevin Kelly that came up with the name. It wasn't even us. And we thought it was cool to have the C2C, and it just sounded cool, C2C, coast to coast. But from a more, I guess, spiritual sense, it came from two people of different walks of life, very different upbringings, different upbringings and different, we came to the business in much different ways. And we kind of found this mutual, this bond in the middle somewhere. He came up completely different than I did. His lifestyle was totally different than mine. I know he had definitely a rougher upbringing growing up. And I was fortunate not to be to deal with what he had to deal with, but our love of wrestling brought us together from coast to coast, from two different sides of the spectrum, brought us together. And we definitely had a lot of ridiculous names. A lot of them I can't say here because they're not appropriate.
That's okay. Wait a second though. Well, wait a second. You don't have to say them. That's fine. But I'm just curious. If they're inappropriate, how do you come up with that name then? It's like, here's a good name. Well, wait, we can't use that.
I think we would just try to pop each other, and we would just send them. We would send them over to Delirious or the other guys in Ring of Honor just
to get the reaction, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's great. Is there anyone that you do remember that you could say without getting anyone in any trouble?
Let me think. There were a few just weird ones like Monster City X because we were both a Monster Factory. And
Monster Factory, yeah.
Yeah. This one was a little on the edge. We were one black, one brown. One black, one brown. I don't know. Just stupid stuff that we would try to pop people with. I mean, we knew none of them would fly or get approved, but we would just say them anyway.
It's almost like when you have one you like, I think that what we can learn too, if you have one you really like, send a bunch of really bad ones.
Yes.
So then when you send the one you really like, they're like, oh yeah, you know what? Yeah, we've already been through 20 of them. Let's just get, that's a good one.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good idea.
It almost works works that way. I mentioned some of your superlatives. To you, what does LSG bring to the table?
I think Especially my motivation and my backstory. It's much different than anyone else's. I've always seen myself as somebody who wanted to ascend to greater heights, or um, maybe transcend mediocrity, or just the normal life, like what people expect of you. I was brought up. People thought I would just go to school, go to college, get a job, and just live this normal life. And I always think of the ace of space as transcending that into a different stratosphere, and just transcending, and it's always that chase for greatness. And I think people can get behind that, when they see someone that's come from the bottom and is constantly rising and rising and rising and pushing through. I think that's what I bring to the table.
The underdog.
Yes, absolutely.
Are you a fan of Daniel Bryan?
Oh yeah, of course. Love Daniel Bryan.
That's
Love
such a well, what a talent, but also that underdog mentality, and another Ring of Honor alum.
Right. He's one of the best. He's one of the best to look up to. Absolutely.
How did you become a pro wrestler?
Well, I had a buddy from high school. His name is Tough Tim Hughes. He's another Edison, New Jersey resident, or former resident. We knew each other from high school. He started wrestling, and I decided to go with him one day to training, and I saw he was in the ring and running the ropes. I think he was training with Homicide, and just getting his butt whooped. And I was like, you know what? I want to do this. Like, I want to get in there. I'm an athlete. I played sports my whole life. I'm a baseball player. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to get in there, and I'm going to give it a shot. And it just started coming naturally. And once I started training a little bit, we started, hopping from school to school until we landed at the Monster Factory.
And in that sense, how did you find the Monster Factory? And did you know about it before even going there? I mean, it was such a great place.
Yeah, it always had a great reputation. I didn't know anyone that personally had gone there, so I just didn't. I guess at the time I didn't know who to talk to. I met someone at a wrestling event, and they suggested we should go because Gerald Briscoe was doing a seminar there. He was doing a camp at the Monster Factory. So my buddy Tim and I, we thought this was a good opportunity. Let's go to the Monster Factory. Let's work out in front of Gerald Briscoe, get his feedback, and when you're coming up in the business, the best thing to do is go to seminars and try to learn from anybody possible. So we couldn't pass that up. And once we saw the facility and we saw how Danny Cage treated the business of wrestling and wanted, what he wanted for his students, we knew that was the place for us.
You mentioned Gerald Briscoe.
Yeah.
Who, what a career.
Right.
In the ring and outside the ring. Did you know that much about his background, wrestling background? Because that was many years ago, too. We saw the Stooges later on.
Yeah.
Did you know anything about Gerald Briscoe going into that?
I knew a little bit. Obviously I saw this stuff on TV, when I was a kid. But I think once I finally met him and I started doing more research and just kind of looking back, and now we're so lucky we have these archives of footage and we have the network and things like that. You can really go back and study everybody, and you get that appreciation for these guys. You don't realize what kind of career he had before he was working, under Vince on TV. And it's so cool because it validates everything that he talks about in his camps, in his seminars. He's not just a, on screen character. He's a true legend. And you go back and watch all that, his career, and everything you hear at the camp, it solidifies it. That
seemed very impactful to you. Do you remember much about it as far as anything you took away from that camp?
Yeah. So anyone who knows Gerald, he's a huge amateur wrestling fanatic, and most of the times he's scouting amateur wrestlers, to bring to WWE. Well, not so much anymore, but that's his forte. And if you know about the Monster Factory, we're actually in a wrestling school. It's actually used by the township of Paulsboro, which is famous for wrestling. And you really need to know what you need to know what you're doing out there. I didn't wrestle in high school at all, but once I joined the Monster Factory and learned from Danny Cage and Gerald Briscoe, you start learning these techniques, and it kind of legitimizes what you do. You bring that little that extra flair of realism when you know how amateur wrestling techniques, and it's stuff that I carry to this day. Like, I'll never forget Danny saying, "Shoot the half, shoot the half, shoot the half." And like, that's cemented in my mind now. Anytime I see the opportunity to shoot a half, I shoot a half in a match. Like, it's just it adds that little legitimacy to the wrestling.
After that, with Gerald Briscoe, the camp, did you become an Oklahoma State University fan? And did you get to meet him? And did you tell him you were a baseball player? And he said, "Well, that's okay."
I didn't. No, I did not. I really should have though, but I don't think he would have. I don't think he would have been impressed by baseball.
Yes, I know. Because that's so much with his amateur wrestling background and his brother Jack. It was just amazing. But hey, Macho Man Randy Savage, baseball player.
Yeah, he was.
It's happened, and others as well. What are your thoughts of being a baseball player? Because not too many baseball players transition to pro wrestling. And I'm going to guess that you were a second baseman or an outfielder.
Cool. I mean, yeah, I did play some outfield. I either played second base or shortstop. So, yeah, up the middle. Second, short, or center. So that's where I was all the time. I pitched a little bit too because I'm ambidextrous. So I used to throw some complete games. I'd start righty, finish lefty. It's pretty insane.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. And I'm wondering, in pro wrestling, does that give you sort of a different twist, a different mindset there where you could go left, right?
With some things, yeah, some things. There's like a unwritten rule in wrestling about using a certain part of your body, working the left side and things like that, unless you're in Mexico. But yeah, somewhat. But I think what I took away mostly from baseball was the work ethic. And a lot of like the conditioning that goes into it. We did a lot of off-season conditioning, and the footwork. The footwork is huge in wrestling. It's one of the top things that scouts look for. So I think the footwork, my good footwork from baseball, really helped me with my transition to wrestling.
Wow, especially as a middle infielder, shortstop, second baseman. And was it at Edison High School?
Yes, Edison High School. I played a lot of travel baseball in New Jersey and New York.
Yeah, travel baseball. I'm in South Florida. Travel baseball and baseball is huge here because you could play it year round.
Yeah, it was.
How far did you?
I didn't. So my travel leagues were great too because they took place during the summer and fall when a lot of the college kids were out, and I was still in high school. I was a younger kid, and we were getting opportunities to play with college kids or retired pros or semi-pros. So the competition was high, and my dad put me in a league when I was 14 years old, and I'm playing with adults. I think that's what made me better, though. I mean, you work with the people that are older than you and more experienced, and that's the best way to learn.
When you were younger, is that really what you played was baseball, or did you play some other sports?
I played soccer too. I have a love for basketball too. I didn't play any organized basketball, but yeah, I played soccer and baseball. But
baseball you took to, you were good at it. Were there thoughts of, hey, college baseball?
There were. I ended up going to Rutgers University, so that kind of like threw things off. My focus kind of went to school, and at the same time, I think deep down I knew I wanted to wrestle. And I did wait until after college to start. I think maybe it was my senior year of college I started wrestling, but I knew in the back of my mind that that's where my focus was. And it, not that I fell out of love with baseball, but the time and dedication that was needed for it, I just didn't have at the time. And I just knew my heart was somewhere else.
Scarlet Knights?
Yeah, Scarlet Knights.
They had a pipeline down here for football, especially with Greg Ciano when he coached there, because he was a University of Miami coach on the staff and then became head coach up there. And there was a lot of recruiting. Every holiday, Fort Lauderdale, I-95, there would be a huge billboard. Happy holidays from Rutgers University.
That is fantastic.
Fort Lauderdale. And we all knew, because college football is huge down here at University of Miami. We all knew why that billboard was in Fort Lauderdale when you're driving on 95. Get the name recognition out there.
Oh, speaking of University of Miami, Ring of Honor, we had an event there. That was mind blowing because as a kid, I always thought I want to go to University of Miami. It was like in my head, I wanted to go there. And getting to wrestle in that building, I was like, this is insane.
The Wasco Center.
Yes.
That was huge. And I believe that night it was a internet taping show, if I'm thinking of the same one, that was there. But that whole setup was really incredible, really was.
Especially getting our locker room basically was the basketball locker room. So it was just like, wow.
You were right next door to the baseball field.
I've been there before. I think when I was a little younger. I think is that one named after Alex Rodriguez? Is that the one?
Now it is. Yes. Yeah. I think it was back then, but I'm not definite when Ring of Honor was there.
Yeah.
Well, it was right next to literally you could have walked to it from the Wasco Center where the basketball plays. And what a nice facility. When you were thinking about college ball, then obviously I mentioned football, but University of Miami also had a great baseball program and still does as well. Yeah. So you knew of the U.
Of course. Oh yeah, totally. I knew about it. I wasn't good enough to play there, that's for sure. But I definitely would have loved to go to school there. I have family in Miami, so like especially that night was very special for me because it was the first time a lot of that family, my grandfather, who sadly passed away, he got to see me wrestle for the one and only time that night.
Do you remember what match you worked that night?
Yes, it was an 8-man tag. It was myself, my former tag partner Shaheem Ali, and the Bouncers versus the team formerly known as Lifeblood, which was Tracy Williams. It was Bandito. It was Juice Robinson, I believe, and somebody else. I don't remember. Pretty crazy match though.
What a collection of pro wrestlers too, and styles.
Yeah, crazy.
That must have been great. And then doing it in front of your grandfather and family.
Yeah.
How psyched were you for that?
It was crazy. That's one of the most, I guess, rewarding things for me. I mean, I've been very lucky to, travel over and perform at these awesome places. But I think the most rewarding experiences are wrestling in front of my family. Because, a lot of people who are not involved with wrestling, they don't understand it. They know that I'm doing it, but then when they finally get to see it firsthand, they start to understand why all the sacrifices and all the missed birthday parties and all the missed family gatherings and things like that. They start to understand, wow, like he's out there living his dream and he's missing out on this stuff, but it's because he really loves this. And I think it gives them an appreciation for what I do.
Well, I think it's cool too because you did go to college. And that was another. I'm going to ask you that, so we'll bring it up now. What did you end up getting your degree in?
Digital communications and media studies.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I still work in it too. When I'm not wrestling, I still do consulting work and help lead projects and things like that when I'm not wrestling. Especially now the pandemic, we have a lot of downtime, so I can still work, which is kind of cool.
Was that important to your family too? Yeah. You're living your own life. You're going to do your own thing. You're an adult. But was it important to them, whether you were going into baseball or pro wrestling, that it's like, hey, look, we don't know where baseball could lead. We don't know where pro wrestling could lead. Get the education.
Yeah, my dad was a baseball player. He was really good too, and he was scouted by several teams, major league teams. I think he was brought down to do trials for like the Cubs and Red Sox and I think the Royals, a few others. He was a pitcher. And I guess part of me as a kid always wanted to make him happy and try to, pick up where he left off. But regardless, I knew they wanted me to go to college. They were both immigrants. They came here when they were babies. My mom's Cuban. She came here when she was 5. My dad came here when he was 2. He's Colombian. They didn't get to go to college, and I knew they wanted me to go to college. So that was kind of every generation. I knew they wanted every generation to just keep getting better and better and pick up where the last one left off.
Mention Cuba. Yeah. There are a lot of Cuban Americans in South Florida, of course, Little Havana, in Miami. It really is. Is that culture also up in New Jersey as well?
Yeah, we have a lot actually. So where I live, it's pretty wild. Down the street, we've got 2 Colombian-owned restaurants over here, and down the road where Jay Lethal's from in Elizabeth, New Jersey, it's full of Colombians and South Americans. And, you hit up the turnpike 30 minutes from here, it's very Cuban. So very diverse here in New Jersey. And, it's cool to have a little bit of like that flavor from Miami here.
Multicultural and the diversity. And that's very important, especially these days too.
Of course.
How do you feel growing up in Edison and family? You mentioned your family situation was good,
Yeah.
so that's very good to hear. What was it like for you and just being able to have that role model and that upbringing? And did your father coach you in baseball?
Okay, so yes, he did coach me in baseball. He coached my travel team at Edison. Edison's a very diverse place. It's a big, it's a big city. People don't really realize it's as big as it is. Very diverse. So I think growing up, I just got to meet so many different kinds of people, and it just appreciation for all kinds of people and love for all kinds of people. And having my dad as a coach was so cool because he's going to be my harshest critic. And he's going to kick me in the butt, when I'm not working hard. And like I said, I always wanted to impress him or work, to impress him or to make him proud. So having him there and coaching me along, and that was pretty cool. And because my dad was in the military, he's an Army vet. He was hard. He was hard on us. He'd show up to practice and he'd say, "I'm going to make you all puke today." And I'm like, "Oh man, we're 12 years old." In my head, I'm okay, but I could see the scared looks on my friends, on their faces.
Did you have thoughts of going in the military yourself?
Not really. I think my dad, he loved his time in the military, but I think he had different plans for me, and it never really crossed my mind.
Was he a tad disappointed that baseball ended, or that it was okay?
I think at first he was, just because when I said I was going to wrestle instead, he's like, "What? Like, what the? Are you serious?" It wasn't like, "Hey, hey Dad, I'm going to be a doctor instead." He's like, it's like, "Hey, I'm going to be a pro wrestler." So to him, it's like, "What?" I don't think he really understood it. I mean, he got to see me wrestle, but I don't think he really understood what I was doing until he saw me at Madison Square Garden.
Oh my, what a place to go see you compete. And
Yeah.
What was that like? Hometown Jersey kid. Here he is at MSG, the Mecca.
Wild. And I had been there several times. I'm a Knicks fan, so I would get on the train, watch Knicks games. I've been there for WWE events. So getting to perform there, it's something no one can ever take away from me. It's in the history books. My name's on the card. If you look at it, my name's there. No one could take that away. And my mom, my dad, brother, my cousin, and my girlfriend were all there, and they got to soak that in with me.
It's amazing because I remember back in the day when Hulk Hogan was huge.
Yeah.
And there would be these videos of him from the back, the dressing room area of Madison Square Garden, and then coming through the curtain. And I'm just curious, did you remember if you had to go through sort of the hallway backstage to get to the ring and how that went for you? I don't know if it's exactly the same, but do you remember that portion of it?
I absolutely do. It's enormous back there. But what's cool is there's a hallway, and I'm sure it goes around the entire thing, but the hallway we were walking through had all these posters of everyone who's performed there. And just walking past Hulk Hogan, and seeing, people like Bruce Springsteen and all this kind of, it was just ridiculous. Ridiculous.
It's almost like you wanted to have a photo of yourself and just put it there as you're walking down, and then make sure no one notices it.
Just tape it over Hulk.
You tape it over. Wow, I got to ask you a little more about the baseball. I'm a huge baseball fan, and finding out that you played baseball. So Yankees or Mets?
Let's go Mets. Sorry, I know you have Marlins hat on, but
that's okay. You know what? I'm not a Yankees fan at all. We beat the Yankees in the World Series. We got that. I know now Derek Jeter's down here, of course. Yeah. But the Mets are okay. Actually, I'll tell you what. LSG, I grew up, well, I didn't grow up. My first 8 years was in Connecticut. Okay. I was born in Waterbury, Connecticut, near New Haven.
Yeah.
My favorite team when I first grew up many years ago was the New York Mets.
Oh, really?
Shea Stadium, my first ball game, we got to go to Shea Stadium, and you won't remember this, but I'll say it anyway. Rusty Staub, the old redhead, played in right field, and that's what I remember. I remember that about the old Shea Stadium and going to that game and sitting up in the bleachers and being able to see a Mets game, and it was a lot of fun. It really was. I think that's what started me with enjoying the game of baseball.
Yeah.
For you, who were your favorites then for the Mets? Were you? I'm trying to get the time frame. Was it Dale Strawberry, Doc Gooden era, or no? It was after that.
After that, but that love, because that was my dad's team. That's the team my dad loved. He got to see the Mets win the World Series. I was born after that, so I missed it, unfortunately. But I grew up obviously, idolizing those guys, even though I didn't see them play. But my team was like the late '90s, early 2000s. Guys like Edgardo Alfonso and Ray Ordonez and John Olerud, John Light, Al Leiter. Just that Mets team was awesome, and it sucks that they lost against the Yankees in the Subway Series. But to get to see my team in the World Series was fantastic. And we've had some good years since then, and I'm very hopeful for this year. And we've got a great team. It's just there's something about being an underdog. We live in the shadow of the Yankees here in New Jersey and New York, and there's something about being an underdog. When you win, it just tastes so much better. It's so much sweeter.
They've assembled a good team. That division is the Phillies.
Yeah.
The Marlins are okay. Young still, made it to the playoffs, shortened season last year, beat the Cubs in the first round. Still very young. Don't know now with the long season, because now we're going the full season mostly this year. But the Mets have improved themselves. The Phillies are good. The Nationals are good. They're going to be battling, fighting, beating each other up basically this year.
And the Braves too. I think it's going to be a very competitive division.
Well, you mentioned a couple of things you mentioned there. Al Leiter. Al pitched a no-hitter for the Marlins as well during his career. And I don't know if you knew this, his son, only because I saw it on ESPN highlights, just pitched a no-hitter in college.
Really? That's really cool. I didn't know that.
It really is cool. And they were doing a little thing like whose no-hitter was better, Dad's, and they were doing that. It was good. It was fun. Which do you like better? That we're asking Al about his son. That was cool. And the other thing I wanted to mention was John Olerud. Do you remember what was interesting about John Olerud?
The helmet.
He wore a helmet when he played first base.
That was so cool. But I was like, you know what? That's smart.
It is. Yeah. Now, see, I don't want to. I know we spent a lot of time, and I appreciate you spending this time. I really do have some other questions I want to ask you, but I have to tell you the John Olerud story. So, Ricky Henderson. Great ball player, one of the best. He's played for many teams. During the end of his career, he's on a team, and all of a sudden, he looks on the bench, and he sees a guy with a helmet playing first base coming out. He's playing first base. He goes over to him, and he goes, "Hey, you know what? About 10 years ago, I played with another guy that wore a helmet playing first base." John Olerud, deadpan, looks at Ricky and says, "Yeah, Ricky, that was me." That was it. And Ricky didn't know at all. But it was just that, like, who else would wear a helmet? But then Ricky's telling him, "Oh, yeah, I used to play with a guy that wore a helmet. Now you're wearing a
I had never heard that. That's so great.
I know. That's just so cool and all. But hey, with the baseball, that is so cool for you. You got to play your baseball. Now you're doing your professional wrestling. And what are your goals? What do you want from this now that you're in Ring of Honor and with all the great talent there? And if you could tell us some of the great talent that is at Ring of Honor these days.
Yeah. Our talent is world class. We have one of the most diverse rosters from, styles to ethnicity too, which is something I really love. You get to wrestle people from all over the world when you wrestle for Ring of Honor. I think for 2021, I want to win gold. I've never held a championship at Ring of Honor, but I think I've evolved into just a much better wrestler and performer. I think I'm opening a lot of eyes, and every match I have is better than the last. And I think it's destiny, it's fate that I will win championship at some point, whether it's the TV championship, pure championship, or maybe the world championship one day. It's going to happen. Nothing's going to stop me. And we've got top talent. We've got Jay Lethal and Roosh, the guys in the main event at the anniversary show, or the Briscoes who've been there forever, but they are legends and some of the best in the world. And then you've got these fantastic luchadors like Rey Horus and Flamita and Bandito, and it's just such an eclectic and diverse group of people, and everyone's awesome. If if you can't hang, you can't work in Ring of Honor, and that's just the bottom line.
How far have you come since you started from the days of the Giovanni brothers, Leon and Max, pride of Edison High School, wrestling at Edison High School?
Man, how did you find that? Very far, very, very far. You know, back then we didn't know what we were doing yet. You know, and you have to fail to excel and to learn. And back then, that's actually my brother was wrestling a little bit before he got full time into like acting and whatnot. But we got to have a little run as a tag team back in the day. My little brother and I. That was so much fun. But I look back at it, and you know, we didn't know what we were doing.
But how much fun was it?
Oh, so much fun, especially wrestling in a high school auditorium. That's ridiculous.
Were you guys like the studs then at the time? Here you are, two Edison High School guys being able to wrestle there.
Yeah. You know, it's funny because all the teachers showed up to watch, and they're like, "What the hell? Like that? This is what you started doing after you graduated."
So
like,
cool. Hey, you mentioned acting.
Like, you're not married with a kid yet? Like, no, I'm wrestling, and I am in tights right now, wrestling in the gym.
Yeah. But you've come a long way since then.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Hey, you mentioned acting and your brother. Does your brother do any acting? Is he something like theater or TV or movies, commercials?
He's done a little bit of everything. A lot of theater, short film, some TV. He's actually fluent in sign language. So he actually toured with the National Deaf Theater. So he's hearing, but the troupe always, carries a hearing actor or a few hearing actors. So, he's fluent in sign language. He's performed all over the country. He actually lived in Connecticut for a year when he was touring with them. So he's a super talented guy, and I don't want to give away any spoilers, but he may be back in training. I don't know. I don't want to say anything. But yeah, he's an extremely talented guy, and he is one of the best promos I've ever heard. When the world starts to hear what he has to say, they're going to be blown away.
We could see the Giovanni brothers 2.0.
Maybe.
Did you ever have any interest in acting? Did you do any acting when you were in high school?
Not at all. I was so shy and timid in high school. That was not even a thought. You couldn't have paid me millions of dollars to do it. There's no way. I found comfort in sports. That's where I was able to kind of, be comfortable with myself. But I think wrestling is actually what brought a lot of, this out of me, because otherwise I would have been a really quiet guy for my whole life.
You're known as the Human Rocket, but also Ace of Space.
Yes.
Wow. That is so cool. How did you come up with the Ace of Space? And I'm also curious, and I know this was back in the day, but were you a fan or seeing things on YouTube of the Rocket Owen Hart?
Oh, yeah, definitely a little bit of that. So Ian Riccaboni, he used to be the commentator at the Monster Factory, so I've known him before Ring of Honor. We came up together. And he just, I think, obviously he's watching all my matches and calling all my matches, and seeing my style, the high flying explosiveness and things like that. And we started joking around about using the name the Human Rocket, because I saw it in a comic book, an old comic book from the 70s. A character used that name, and I was like, why not? It's a little ridiculous, but I think people remember it. And it caught on, and people started calling me the Rocket and Human Rocket. I'm flying around, and it kind of evolved into this Ace of Space thing. Kind of like my gear's very like flashy and a little out there spacey wise, and
Space age.
Yes, yeah,
futuristic.
So, futuristic. That's a good way to say it. Good way to put it. Even from my entrance video and the music that I come out to, it's kind of out there. And that goes back to what I was saying before about me always as a person never wanted to settle for being a regular person, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I always thought about transcending into orbit, into a different, something greater, larger than life.
You have to stand out in this profession anyway.
Yes, exactly.
let's wrap this up, and I'm going to do a few questions quickly so we can get you out of here. And thank you so much. I enjoyed this so much talking with you. I know we covered a lot of baseball too, but I wanted to talk some baseball. So that was
different than the other interviews,
Thank you. All right. So speaking of baseball, have you been to Cooperstown?
I have not.
Whoa. All right. That's still bucket list. Hall of Fame. That's good. So then you didn't compete in Dreams Park, the tournament.
I didn't.
Did you know about Dreams Park? Because that's a huge baseball tournament for travel teams. I didn't know if you were aware of it.
Yeah, growing up, I knew about that. But that's a bucket list to just get out there for one of those weekends. I don't know when we're going to be able to do that again. Hopefully next year, for the next Hall of Fame ceremony and all. I know they make a huge weekend out of it. That's definitely on the bucket list.
What do you think of Danhausen, and is he evil?
He is very evil, but he's also very nice. He's quite a unique character. But I think what's cool about him is that he brings something completely different to Ring of Honor. You think of Ring of Honor and it's like very, very serious, and then he kind of brings this different this light to the darkness. You know what I mean? It's nice to have a little bit of a mix, and getting to compete with him, in a pay-per-view is a big deal too, because he's blowing up right now.
Not to give anything away, no Don Jardine alerts, but do you have a game plan to avoid eating teeth?
I'm going to make sure that I somehow throw the teeth down someone else's throat before they can get in mine. Maybe Brian Johnson's. Maybe we could throw it down his throat so you can avoid mine.
You mentioned so many cool places that you wrestled.
Yeah.
Will you be wrestling in Alaska?
I will. I head out to Alaska next Thursday for, I think, 10 days, 5 events in 10 days, which is unheard of. I don't think it's ever been done before in Alaska. And I'm going to be competing in the first ever Singapore cane match in Alaska. Ooh, that's going to be rough.
that is so – just to be able to travel like that, how cool is it that you get to travel to all these cool places? And I don't know what the weather like now is, but I'm thinking you're going to have to bring a lot of warm clothes with you, but you should be used to that from Edison, New Jersey.
Yeah. Oh, this feels like the Caribbean compared to Alaska, though. I think Alaska's going to be around the 20 degrees when we go out there in April. But it's so cool because never in a million years would I have thought I'd be traveling all over these places. I'm about to hit 30 states, soon, and like 4 or 5 different countries. So if I had never gotten to wrestling, there's no chance I would have been able to do all this. So I'm very fortunate and grateful for all the promotions that have, brought me to these places. It's just unreal. It's unreal, and just forever grateful.
And I don't see in your future or present of you becoming LSG Hausen.
No, not happening.
All he's been able to do, I go back to that because it just popped into my head. It's so different and just so funny in a weird way. Tapping into that is just amazing. Okay, before I let you go, you got some really cool stuff behind you, all the figurines. Tell us a little bit quickly. You can tell us a little bit about what's behind you and why you're into that.
Yeah, sure. So my dad, he grew up. He was a big avid comic book fan as a kid and stuff. And when I was little, he gave me his collection. Basically, showed me his boxes of comic books from when he was a kid, and it kind of inspired me. And I'm an artist as well, so that kind of inspired me to want to draw. And growing up, there's something cool about having the statues and things like that. It kind of reminds me of my childhood. At the same time, as an artist, I appreciate art. It is artwork. And especially, when I was a kid, it was a bad thing to like this stuff. But now in 2021, this runs media. Superheroes are everywhere. So I feel like I'm a little ahead of the curve, and I want to be the superhero for wrestling. So Hurricane 2.0.
And have your own action figure.
Yes, one day it will happen.
Do you have a favorite action figure back there?
I don't know. I'm a big Captain America fan. I love Captain America. I like I got Superman too. The classics. Those are always cool.
And you mentioned being an artist.
Yeah.
Do you have drawings that you have hanging up, or do you more or less keep those away?
I've got a lot of sketchbooks with plenty of stuff. Nothing hanging here. You know, usually I gift them to people, but a lot of it is ink. I do some. Inking is probably my favorite thing to do.
And do you have a favorite one, or do a couple come to mind of anything that you've created that you really, wow, I really like that?
Yeah, I do a lot of sometimes I do comic book style stuff, but I do abstract things as well. Very abstract stuff, kind of like leave it up to interpretation for the person who's looking at it. I was never one of those people that wanted to force something on somebody, so I like for them to look at the artwork and kind of just figure it out for themselves.
You could do some. Oh, go ahead.
I want to eventually start painting, because one of my favorite artists is Alex Ross. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. He's one of the most famous comic book artists, and I'm sure if you saw his work, you would recognize it. But definitely, I want to start painting at some point.
Do you go to Comic Cons? I
do. I've been to maybe 5 of them. Yeah.
That's a great place. Down here, we had some before pandemic, and a lot of the comic book artists go to those events as well. It's really cool to be one of those things. Okay.
Oh yeah.
That's enough. We did a long interview. I appreciate the time. Hey, maybe you could do artwork, LSG versus Danhausen, and put something together on canvas. That might be pretty cool to get out there or whatever.
That's a very good idea. I'll have to talk to you about
it. Social media for you.
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. It's all the same handle. It's at Leon St. Giovanni. Just search LSG or the Ace of Space. You will find me. And definitely subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'm going to be posting a lot of cool travel vlogs, especially my next trip to Alaska. All that will be documented, and it's going to be a trip of a lifetime, so don't miss that.
LSG, the Ace of Space. One of the coolest names out there. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Ring of Honor!
Yeah, ROH.